Willie was already dead, at least, that's what Catherine and Henry had wanted. His name had been dragged through every news thread, coded as a thief, smeared across every comment section like digital rot. His girlfriend had watched in silence as he was destroyed, not once speaking in his defense. His sister handed over line-by-line comparisons of his code to Henry's, smiling like she'd won a game. And Nancy, the girl who once tapped his shoulder in the lab every morning and said, "Let's win this together," had given his algorithm to the wolves. They didn't kill him with guns or knives, they did it with words, whispers in lecture halls, screenshots on school confession pages. Willie just copied Henry's public GitHub dump. He didn't even change a variable name. He's disgusting. A fraud, a loser. The final blow came from his father. "You've embarrassed this family for the last time. You should have just died before shaming me." He did. His body gave out in a hospital room, hooked up to machines, lungs filled with a slow-killing fluid. A nurse tried to resuscitate him, but it was too late. His heart gave out, quietly. There was no crowd, no cameras, just silence. But 7 days before that hospital scene, he blinked. The same blinking cursor stared back at him from the screen in the campus lab. The same flickering overhead light buzzed above his head. His neck still ached from coding too long without rest. The same calendar glared at him. Submission deadline, 7 days left. And it all came flooding back. The accusations, the shame, the betrayal, and the quiet death no one mourned. Willie didn't speak, didn't move, not at first. He simply stared at the monitor, breathing slowly, absorbing the déjà vu crawling under his skin. Faint laughter broke the trance. Nancy's voice, just a few seats down. She was chatting with another lab member, sharing snacks, acting like the world hadn't burned down around him, like she wasn't already sharpening a blade behind her keyboard. Willie logged into his terminal and immediately began typing. Not code, not yet, notes, dates, sequence of events. He wasn't here to win the competition anymore. He was here to test everything. This time, he wouldn't trust anyone. He pulled up Henry's page, the fake genius with a body built for marketing and a brain borrowed from Willie's hard drive. There it was again, the exact code structure Willie hadn't even uploaded yet. But he remembered his last life. He clicked through to Catherine's stories. She was posting group photos, tagging Henry, using the hashtag #hackathonhearts. Last time, she'd claimed it was all harmless, just admiration, just coincidence. But it wasn't. Willie opened his notebook and titled the page, 7 Days Until Erasure. He wrote down every lie, every face, every move that led to his undoing. If they wanted to erase him from history, this time, he'd burn the book before they reached the final chapter. He didn't need revenge, not yet. He needed silence, he needed control, he needed to watch. They were going to regret leaving him alive, because this time, he wouldn't just survive the game, he'd change the rules entirely. Willie wasn't the kind of student professors remembered for raising his hand. He was the one who stayed in the lab when everyone else went home. The one who left the lights on at 3 a.m. while debugging a memory leak line by line. The one who never posted selfies with his teammates or joined celebratory dinners after hackathons. Willie didn't need praise, he needed silence, clean syntax, and an empty room with nothing but code and the hum of his server fan. At 22, Willie was already a name whispered across campus forums as a quiet genius. Not because he flaunted his projects, but because no one else had ever written a payment security algorithm that cracked 3 corporate internship competitions in 1 semester. While most students joined clubs and played sports, Willie monitored backdoor vulnerabilities in commercial encryption libraries for fun. He studied at Axbridge University, a prestigious tech institution funded by the wealthiest corporate giants in the country. The school was built like a sleek financial hub, all chrome railings, glass walls, and endless hallways lined with black server cabinets. To the outsiders, it was a breeding ground for the next generation of tech leaders. To Willie, it was a cage of expectations padded with wires. Catherine was the only soft thing in his world, or so he used to believe. Raised under the same roof as him, Catherine's mother had been employed as the family housekeeper since Willie was a toddler. She grew up knowing how to keep quiet during his study hours, how to hand him a glass of water without interrupting his thought process. She called his father Sir, his sister Ma'am, and Willie, just Will. She was pretty in a soft, non-threatening way. Almond eyes, pastel sweaters, always careful with her tone, always smiling just a little longer than necessary when guests were around. To most, she was a sweet girl fef. From humble beginnings, lucky to be taken in and raised like family. But Willie knew the difference. Family was allowed to speak at the dinner table. Catherine waited to be spoken to. Still, she was the only one who stayed by his side when others didn't understand his obsession with digital security, when he skipped birthdays to refactor code, or when he'd forget to eat until his hands shook. She joked that he had 2 girlfriends, her and System 32. He laughed at that line the first 100 times she said it. But cracks had begun to form, small hairline fractures he chose to ignore. Like the way she lingered on Henry's live streams. How she mentioned his perfect posture or how funny he was in his coding in the gym reels. At first, it felt harmless, just fandom. Then came the comparisons. Henry's not even from the CS department and he's already sponsored. Did you see his followers last week? He's so humble, he always shares his source code, not like those guys who guard theirs like gold. You should smile more in photos, Will, like Henry does. People love that. Willie would nod, but the quiet in his chest started to fill with static. Nancy noticed before he did. She always noticed everything. She was the kind of person who never had to raise her voice. She just watched, observed, waited. If Willie was the server, Nancy was the audit log that captured everything. They'd been assigned to the same team in their 3rd year when the university began sorting candidates for national security-based competitions. Willie naturally took over the system design. Nancy handled penetration testing, but she never once fought for control, never challenged him. Just nodded, coded, and occasionally brought him energy drinks laced with strange metaphors like, "You debug my gloom." Willie didn't know what to make of her. She wasn't affectionate like Catherine, wasn't loud like his sister. She was precise, smart, quietly dangerous, in a way he wouldn't understand until much later. His sister, on the other hand, never pretended to like him. Marissa was studying finance at the same university and walked the halls like she owned every inch of it. In many ways, she did. Their father, Gerald Langston, had invested in half the campus infrastructure. The tech building had his name etched in polished silver near the west wing. Langston Hall for Emerging Systems. Gerald Langston was a man who smiled only when newspapers were involved. His business acumen was legendary in the financial tech sector, and his company had developed trading platforms used by nearly every major bank. He once told Willie, "You have one job, make me proud enough to put your name next to mine." He never said, "I'm proud of you," only, "proud enough." He loved comparing Willie to Marissa. "She has the instincts of a CEO," he'd say. You spend all day in front of a screen trying to outsmart imaginary hackers. She wears confidence like armor. You wear exhaustion like a badge. Be more like her." Willie never asked for admiration, but he had hoped for fairness. Now, with 1 week until the Defense System Competition, an event hosted by the country's top cybersecurity research institute, Willie knew the stakes. The winner of this contest would not only earn national prestige, but a guaranteed role at Lockcore Labs, a place where innovation outpaced politics. Catherine had already hinted she wanted him to win, not for his sake, but because it would look good on her feed. "Imagine the pictures," she whispered once, tracing his jaw with her fingers. "Us holding the trophy together, you in a tailored suit, me in something white." Willie didn't want photos, he wanted peace. But then Henry posted another video. He was wearing a white hoodie, tapping away on a laptop between weightlifting sets. In the background was the Axbridge logo. 3 days left till I submit my defense. Prototype, Henry said to his camera, smiling effortlessly. Let's see if the gym rat can outcode the nerds. Catherine commented 3 heart emojis. Nancy reposted it, Marissa tagged their father, and Willie, he just stared at the blinking cursor on his screen. His future depended on what he did in the next 168 hours. Not just to win, but to prove that he'd never needed any of them to begin with. The first sign something was wrong came through a Discord ping. Willie glanced at the screen, expecting another system status update from his internal testing script. Instead, it was a friend request from someone named Henry Coder. Attached was a link. He clicked it. The page loaded to Henry's latest social media post. It was a coding breakdown, clean, formatted and tagged with the university's competition hashtag. The caption read, "My defense system's core framework, no secrets here, just raw talent." The code in the screenshot was his, not similar, not vaguely inspired. It was line for line his design: recursive loops, encryption keys, variable naming conventions, even the quirky comment block he used for debugging that read, "Don't break my heart, break the firewall," was there. Word for word. Willie's breath stuttered. His hands went cold. He triple-checked, pulled up his files, scanned through backups. The code Henry had just posted online hadn't been uploaded by Willie anywhere, not even in draft. He hadn't pushed it to any server. It was stored locally. Only 4 people had access to that machine: him, Nancy, Catherine, and his sister. Within 20 minutes, hashtags started trending. Hashtag Henry the Hacker King. Hashtag Code Thief Willie. Hashtag Stolen Syntax. By that evening, the university's Reddit thread had exploded. Students, alumni, even external developers weighed in. Henry's code's been public for days. Willie just got sloppy. Kinda pathetic that a CS major is stealing from a PE major, lol. If you can't win, don't compete. He deserves to be expelled. Willie couldn't breathe. He hadn't posted anything, hadn't shared, hadn't said a word. He messaged Nancy. "Did you see Henry's post?" She replied 3 hours later. "Yeah, crazy, right? I'm sure it's just some weird mistake." Then she went offline. When he found Catherine in the library lounge, her reaction was cold. "You think I did this?" she said, sipping from a branded smoothie cup. "That's insulting. I never said that. You didn't have to." There was silence, then, softly, like it hurt her to say it. "I only admired him, Willie. Don't be jealous." Admired him. Willie looked down at her phone resting face up on the table. Henry's face was paused mid-laugh in a livestream window. "You liked his post?" She shrugged. "It's just social media." The university launched an immediate investigation. Willie's team was called into the dean's office. He showed them side-by-side comparisons of Henry's upload and Willie's submission file. The design was identical. Nancy said nothing. Catherine didn't show up. Willie sat in silence as his lead professor shook his head. "I've never seen such an unfortunate waste of potential," he said. "I had high hopes for you." By the next day, their team was disqualified. An official statement was issued to competition judges. All of Willie's previous awards were frozen pending review. His academic standing was marked for dishonor code violation. And then, Marissa went public. She shared a long post on her professional feed, linking Henry's video and claiming she was deeply disappointed in her brother's actions. "We all knew Henry's work was brilliant. It's heartbreaking that someone in my own family tried to ride his coattails." She tagged their father, and he responded. A press photo was released the same evening. Gerald Langston, standing beside Henry, hand on the younger man's shoulder. "This young man represents everything I value: innovation, confidence, and integrity." Willie's hands trembled as he read the statement. His father had adopted him, not by law, but by legacy. He had replaced him without saying a word. Catherine stopped answering texts. Nancy ghosted him. Marissa changed the locks on the guest house. Emails from companies that had offered him interviews were quietly withdrawn. A cease and desist letter arrived from Henry's legal representative, threatening to sue if Willie ever publicly claimed authorship of the design. In the span of 4 days, everything collapsed. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He sat alone in the campus lab while others laughed outside. Every sound felt distant. His vision blurred constantly. Even the blinking cursor on his screen looked like it was mocking him. Then came the fever. It hit suddenly, his body aching, joints locked, breath ragged. He stumbled into the campus clinic, where a nurse gave him antibiotics and told him to rest. He nodded and walked out the door. He collapsed outside in the snow, just 10 feet from the building. No one saw him. When he opened his eyes, he was staring at the same lab ceiling. Fluorescent buzz, the scent of burnt coffee, faint sound of Nancy typing nearby. His screen was still open. The calendar still showed 7 days before the competition. He sat up slowly, pressing a hand to his forehead. His code was still uncompiled, untouched. His heart raced, not from fear, but from memory. He looked at Nancy. She was smiling softly, scrolling through her terminal logs. She turned slightly and said, "You okay, Willie? You fell asleep again?" He nodded. This time, he didn't need evidence. He already knew what they would do. This wasn't just déjà vu, this was a second chance. He minimized his code window, opened a new file, and wrote one word: observe. Then he added the names: Catherine, Nancy, Marissa, Henry. Then underneath it, he wrote, "One of them will fall first." Willie didn't speak for the next 2 days, not in class, not in the lab, not at home. Every movement was calculated, every response was rehearsed, every silence was intentional. He returned to the project terminal late one night and deleted the real defense system he'd been building from scratch. Gone. All of it. Instead, he began recoding something else entirely, an outdated version from his second-year coursework, messy logic, weak security parameters, intentionally flawed function calls. He disguised it as a new solution. He even renamed key files to make them look polished. Then he left it open, carefully, publicly. He shut the lid on his laptop just enough so it would sleep, but not lock. Then he waited. The next afternoon, he refreshed Henry's profile. New post, code breakdown. It was his exact fake script, not just the flawed logic, but even the intentional typo in the function name, encrypt system. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. So it was true. Someone was leaking his code in real time. But who? He reviewed access logs. Nancy had been closest. She always arrived earlier than him and stayed late. She always offered to check things when he was tired. Still, he couldn't rule out Catherine, even though she had barely spoken to him since his rebirth. At dinner, his sister Marissa rolled her eyes at him across the table. "You're looking miserable again. Didn't you say you'd win this year?" Willie didn't answer. "Let me guess, still stuck? Poor genius boy can't handle pressure twice." Their father chuckled politely at the guests seated around the table. "Ignore her," he said loudly. "My son's going to surprise us all. He's brilliant." Then, when the laughter faded and the guests were gone, Gerald caught Willie by the arm and dragged him into his study. His tone turned to ice. "If you ruin this again," he whispered, "I won't just cut ya off. I'll disown you publicly. This company can't afford another embarrassment." Willie stared at him without blinking. "Understood, sir." Later that night, in the lab, Nancy handed him a protein bar. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Just thinking." "About the competition?" Willie hesitated. "Yeah. Hey, are you free tonight?" Nancy paused for half a second, just enough for the hesitation to register. "I might be. Why?" Willie smiled thinly. "Never mind. Just wondered." She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. He stayed in the lab alone after she left and began layering trap codes inside his scripts, embedded lines that pinged him if opened, duplicated, or transferred. The next day, one of those pings triggered, another one an hour later. Someone was watching his screen, not just copying code, monitoring it. Then came the image. On a forum he rarely checked, someone had posted a blurry shot of his laptop, Willie, his workspace, his code window open, taken from behind him, over the shoulder. He stared at the photo. His skin went cold. He tore apart the lab the next hour, checked his desk, his laptop, the ceiling panels, the window blinds. No bugs, no microphones, no hidden cameras, nothing. He stripped down the system logs, reviewed background processes. Still nothing. That's when the headaches began. They weren't normal. They came like lightning, sharp, slicing pain behind the eyes, as if something was clawing at the inside of his skull. His hands would shake, his vision would blur. At times, he couldn't even stand. He ignored it for 3 days, until he collapsed at the stairwell outside Langston Hall. At the hospital, a CT scan was ordered. He lay motionless inside the white circular ring, blinking slowly at the sterile lights above. When he came out, several doctors were already gathered around the screen. One pointed at the scan. "There," he said. "See that shadow? Upper left frontal lobe. Looks like a foreign object. Definitely not congenital. Could be some kind of implant." Willie stared at them. "Implant? In my head?" One of the surgeons looked confused. "You've never had surgery before?" "No." The doctor frowned. "That's not possible." He led Willie into a viewing room and brought up a blown-out version of the scan. "There," he said again, tapping the screen. "See those hooks, almost like a claw? It's wrapped around a segment of your neural cortex. Looks man-made and recent." Willie felt his knees weaken. "What does it do?" he asked. "We can't say for sure, but judging by the structure, it could be a form of receiver, maybe even stimulation-based input." "You mean, like mind control?" "Not exactly, but maybe influence. Thought mapping. Behavior nudging. Hard to say. Can it be removed? We'd need to do a deep scan, possibly surgery, but it's risky. Willie leaned against the wall, the floor felt far away. Someone had put something in his brain. Someone had been reading him, tracking him, triggering pain, monitoring thoughts. But why? And when? He didn't remember being drugged, didn't remember a hospital visit, and the only people who ever got close enough were Nancy, Catherine, and Marissa. He walked out of the hospital that night without checking out, alone. The headache was gone now, but the paranoia wasn't. Back at the lab, Nancy greeted him with a soft smile. "You feeling better?" Willie looked at her carefully. "Yeah," he said. "I finally know what's going on now." Willie sat alone in the temple garden, the sky above smeared with gray. His head still ached from the scan, but the real pain lived deeper, beneath the skin, behind the bone, inside memory. His phone buzzed in his pocket for the 5th time. This time, he answered. "Catherine," he said quietly. She was already sobbing on the other end. "Willie, thank God, I was so scared. I thought you'd done something to yourself." He didn't respond. "I saw your post disappear. You weren't at the lab. Nancy said you'd gone quiet. We were all worried." "We?" he asked softly. "Who exactly is we?" Silence, then a shaky breath. "I didn't mean it like that. I just care. I always did." Willie closed his eyes. Let her talk. Let the performance unfold. "You remember that night at the lake, don't you? You told me no matter what happened, you'd never stop trusting me." "I do remember," he whispered. "And you said you'd never lie to me." Catherine sniffled. "I meant that." "Then tell me something," he said, his tone shifting, cold and flat. "What was the name of the file I deleted from my terminal last Tuesday?" Another pause, a breath caught in her throat. I don't know. How would I? You said you've been worried, but that file was encrypted, and I deleted it from a hidden folder." He waited. Catherine went quiet for too long. Willie's voice dropped. "You've been listening to me." "No, Willie, listen. Did you plant it?" He didn't raise his voice. The silence was louder. Catherine laughed, not sweetly, not nervously, but with a bitter edge. "Please, do you think I could do something that sophisticated? No, that wasn't me. That was your darling sister." He didn't blink. "She's the one who wanted control," Catherine continued. "Your father always said you were too smart to stay loyal. She said she'd fix that, said she had a plan." Willie ended the call. The next day, Nancy showed up at the hospital. She brought warm soup and concern in a gentle smile. "Hey," she said, "you've been gone." "I needed air," he replied. She sat beside him and leaned in carefully. "Willie, I need your help. The payment system is failing. Users are reporting vulnerabilities. Your dad, he's under pressure. He said if you could just patch the architecture, he'll reinstate everything." Willie studied her face. "What do you need, Nancy?" She hesitated. "I need the backup of the last stable version, the one we built before. Everything went wrong." "You mean the one before I died?" She looked down. "Willie, you're not here because you care," he said flatly. "You're here because the company's falling apart. Because there's money on the line, because he sent you." Nancy opened her mouth to argue, but Willie stood up. "You watched it happen," he said. "You stood next to me while they buried me alive, and now that the empire is cracking, you remember my name again." She didn't deny it. When he returned home that evening, Marissa was waiting. She was sipping champagne on the garden terrace, her tone light. "Well, look who finally decided to reappear." Willie said nothing. "I suppose you figured it out by now," she said. "The headaches, the code leaks, the fear. It was never about the competition." He stared at her. "You were always too clever," she said. "Too independent. That was a problem for us, for Dad. So we fixed it." "You put a chip in my head," he said. She smiled. "We called it a safety chip, a fail-safe, a gentle reminder of who you belong to. And if I disobeyed?" She leaned in. "It ruptures. Neat, huh?" Willie clenched his jaw. "You could have just killed me." She tilted her head. "But then we wouldn't have your genius, your code, your instincts. This way, we got it all, until you started resisting. And Henry? Marissa laughed. Dad adopted him last week, publicly, said he represents the future of Langston Systems. You're just a bad memory, a liability. Willie turned away. That night, he unplugged everything, shut off every device, removed every trace of himself from the network. He took a cab to a rural clinic in the outskirts of the city. No Wi-Fi, no cameras, no tracking, just scalpels, wires and risk. The next morning, under a different name, the chip was removed. The surgeon said it was unlike anything they'd ever seen, organic metal interwoven with neural tissue. The claws had already begun anchoring into deeper layers of memory centers. They cut carefully, cleanly, left a faint scar near his hairline. Willie woke up 12 hours later, groggy but whole. The first breath he took felt like freedom. His phone, still off, buzzed 27 times when he powered it back on. He didn't check any of the messages. Instead, he accessed a private server he'd set up months ago, before the betrayal, before the silence. From that terminal, he connected to the company's core systems using a backdoor no one else knew about. He launched a virus of his own design, silent, undetectable. It didn't erase data, it redirected it. Money flowed backward into ghost accounts, client transactions reversed in loops, server logs falsified, internal audits rewritten in real time. By the time Langston Systems noticed the breach, it was already too late. Across social media, a new username began trending. At W1 and OLZ3R0, no photo, no bio. Just one line of code posted to the world: if they bury you, return stronger. Clients panicked. Investors pulled out, regulators stepped in, the company's value dropped 83% in 36 hours. Catherine posted a crying selfie, begging fans not to associate her with that traitor. Henry went live, claiming innocence. Nancy tried reach it. Nung out again. Marissa went silent. Gerald Langston vanished from the board. But Willie? He boarded a plane. One ticket, no return, new passport, new name, clean slate. The boy who had once written systems to protect people was now the ghost that tore them apart, not out of hatred, not for glory, just to make sure they never forgot who they buried. Nancy stood in front of the system console, like a soldier ready to launch a missile. Her eyes were locked on the lines of code Willie had sent her the night before, sleek, polished, and deceptively elegant. I integrated the patch, she whispered into her headset, deploying now. Across the Langston Systems global network, servers blinked green, APIs pushed updates, transactions routed through the new patch like sand through glass. At first, everything looked perfect. Then the freezing started. Clients across 3 continents reported blocked withdrawals. Their account dashboards spun endlessly. The system's response times dropped to 0. 1 minute passed, then 2, and then the vanishings began. Entire balances evaporated mid-transaction. Audit trails looped back into blank entries. E-wallets showed activity from ghost terminals that didn't exist on the infrastructure map. The servers collapsed into chaos. Langston Systems, once considered the fortress of secure finance, had just gone dark. News outlets exploded. Langston financial crash, over $1.3 billion in client assets missing. Internal breach. Suspected in Langston network meltdown. CEO Gerald Langston, silent amid allegations of systemic exploit. Nancy froze in the hallway, phone clutched in one hand, palm damp with sweat. She knew the code had failed, but what she didn't know was that it had never been meant to succeed. Willie had given her a bomb. A perfectly crafted, beautifully disguised, softly ticking time bomb. She tried calling him 3 times. He didn't answer. On the 4th, he finally picked up. His voice was quiet, steady. "Did you deploy it? You said it would fix the freeze error," she screamed. "Now nothing works. The clients, Willie, the accounts are empty." There was a long pause, then a soft chuckle. "Don't worry, I'm sure Gerald can debug it," he said. "I told you, he's losing his mind. We're hemorrhaging losses by the minute. Please, you have to fix this. Please, for me, for the baby." Silence. Willie leaned back in the dim glow of a rented cafe booth in Madrid, one hand around a cup of coffee. "The baby?" he asked, as if she'd just brought up the weather. Nancy choked on her breath. I didn't mean to tell you like this, but yes, I'm pregnant. Willie didn't flinch. It's not yours, she admitted. He blinked once. It's Gerald's. I'm sorry, I didn't want it to happen this way, but please, Willie, if you don't fix this, everything will fall apart. The company, our names, my daughter's future. His voice cut through her desperation like ice. Then your daughter will grow up learning how betrayal tastes. He ended the call. Nancy collapsed into a chair and buried her face in her hands. Across the ocean, the media erupted with fresh scandals. Footage surfaced, hotel security clips, time-stamped weeks before the competition. Catherine and Henry walking together through the lobby of a private resort in the Maldives, laughing, holding hands. More images followed. Catherine's reflection in the glass of Henry's suite, Marissa stepping into a waiting car beside him. One post went viral with the headline, "Meet the scheming trio, Catherine, Henry, and Marissa. Code, lies, and pillow talk." Catherine posted a teary livestream, blaming stress, misunderstood intentions, and media manipulation. The comments destroyed her. You cheated on a dead guy. You sabotaged your own boyfriend. You belong in hell, not trending. Catherine Langston, ill gold digger with Wi-Fi. Henry tried to fight back with technical streams, offering walkthroughs of his latest original code. Within hours, programmers began dissecting every file he uploaded, and traced the origin of each back to repositories that had long been archived under Willie's credentials. The community rose up. Exposed. Henry, #Langston fraud, #justice for Willie. But it didn't stop there. In a cyber-anonymous leak posted from an encrypted location, a series of files were released, internal company memos, chip blueprints, and surgical reports. The neurochip, the claw embedded in Willie's brain. It was traced back to Langston Systems' own research division, specifically greenlit by Marissa Langston herself. In a boardroom recording, her voice rang clear. If Willie ever steps out of line, we flip the fail-safe. Better to erase him quietly than let him embarrass the company. The fallout was nuclear. Investors pulled out, sponsors vanished overnight. Langston Systems plummeted into irreversible debt. Gerald Langston was summoned to testify before a financial crimes tribunal. He collapsed during the hearing. Cardiac failure. His publicist issued a statement. Mr. Langston has withdrawn from all leadership roles due to health concerns. Nancy was doxxed. Her pregnancy became a circus headline. Some accused her of gold digging, others called her the final parasite on a dying empire. She tried to disappear, but screenshots of her old messages to Willie, "I'll just copy what you write, you don't mind, right?" surfaced and sealed her fate. And the man behind it all? He boarded a flight to Tokyo. No longer Willie Langston, no longer Gerald's disappointment, no longer Catherine's fallback. Just a quiet man with a clean passport, a carry-on filled with encrypted drives, and a name whispered across cybercrime forums like a ghost in the machine. Will Zero, a legend born not from violence, but from silence, from revenge built line by line, from grief converted into architecture, from betrayal rewritten as code. Willie never raised a hand, never screamed, never threatened. He just watched, waited, built, then deleted everything they were, just as easily as they deleted him. The island had no name. Not one anyone would find on a map, at least. It was too small, too far from the mainland, too unremarkable for tourists. A sliver of green carved into endless blue, circled by wind and salt and waves that had never been touched by data cables or satellite feeds. Willie lived in a one-room house built by hand, high on the cliffs overlooking the sea. It had no cameras, no routers, no smart locks or voice assistants, just driftwood, silence, and a soft hum of cicadas in the evening. He rose with the sun and cooked rice over fire, sometimes fish, sometimes nothing. His only companion was the tide that came and went like memory, uninvited, patient, endless. He didn't check the news often, but once a week, he'd unseal the black tablet locked in a wooden drawer beneath the floorboards. Offline only, no SIM, just mirrors to the world he left behind. The company had finally filed for bankruptcy. Langston Systems owed more than $11.2 billion in unpaid debts, lawsuits, and digital restitution. Its final CEO, Marissa Langston, had vanished. Some said she fled to Dubai. Others swore she'd changed her name and married into another conglomerate. Willie knew better. He'd seen her last post, an empty white screen with one line, "It was supposed to be mine." Nancy had given birth. The tabloids never reached consensus on the father. Some claimed it was Henry, others accused a married investor. DNA tests were requested. No one cared about the child, just the scandal. Catherine had resurfaced in the content space. Her channel, @HeartRewired, now offered digital seminars titled "Reclaiming Yourself After Betrayal, Dating After the Storm, How to Love Without Losing." She sold journals, soy candles, lip gloss with glitter. Her followers adored her. Her comment sections were brutal. Wasn't she the one who sold her boyfriend's code for clout? Healing, more like rebranding. A snake with a mic is still a snake. Willie read each headline like he was watching the weather. No joy, no gloating, just data. He closed the tablet, locked it again, buried it beneath the floor. One day, he walked down the old jungle trail toward a temple at the base of the island, carved into stone and shadow, forgotten by time. A monk swept fallen leaves from the stone stairs. He looked up as Willie approached. They stared at each other for a long moment. "I know your face," the monk said, voice soft, "but not your name." Willie bowed slightly. "You've come far," the monk said, sweeping once more. "But are you free?" Willie didn't answer immediately. "I never wanted to win," he said at last. The monk tilted his head. "I just didn't want to be erased." The wind passed between them like a secret. Willie didn't speak again. He left an offering of rice and salt, then turned and walked away. That night, under the stars, he took his phone, the last device connected to his identity, and walked it to the edge of the cliff. He watched the signal bar flicker in the moonlight. No reception, no towers, but it still pulsed, like a heartbeat. He powered it off, dropped it into the ocean. No trace, no name, no number, no version of him left behind. He didn't need it. He didn't need any of them. Not the people who called him a brother, not the woman who called him her love, not the father who only smiled for cameras, not the system he once trusted to protect him. They were all part of a machine built to delete men like him, quiet men, sharp men, men who didn't play games, but wrote the rules others pretended not to see. They had tried to consume him, so he rewrote them, line by line, until there was nothing left. Now, the ocean spoke to him in code, simple patterns, soft algorithms in the current. When the skies turned cold, he traveled north, quietly, alone. He stood on a frozen cliff in Iceland, wrapped in a worn coat, breath fogging in the midnight air. The northern light stretched above him like an endless pulse of data, green, violet, and gold flickering across the black. He didn't take pictures, didn't share the moment, didn't record it. He simply watched. Somewhere far away, the world continued spinning. Systems crashed, stock prices fell, influencers cried, PR agents cleaned, babies were born to silence. But here, on this edge of the world, there was no past, no future, just wind, and one man, a quiet genius, who tore down an empire with nothing but memory, and rebuilt himself in the silence it left behind.